Alrighty. Howdy, everyone. It's me, Mihirson Hassan. Just finished up wrapping up the group stage of the World Cup, in which was a pretty interesting battle in Group G as Switzerland beat Serbia 3-2, 5 goals in all. I mean, one of the most thrilling matches I got to cover here on all of my live reacts that I've done throughout this entire time. So, 48 group stage through games through. It's now time for the knockouts. Knockouts are pretty simple. It's a round of 16, and then afterwards, it's how a tournament usually works: 16 down to quarterfinals, semifinals, and then down to the final. Pretty self explanatory in that way. But either way, I think it'll be pretty cool. So, obviously, as I said, 16 teams in all, it's going to be pretty interesting as well. And the 16 teams have been set. Boy, oh boy, have we seen something interesting this World Cup. It's been always interesting in general to see just the different types of teams that have been involved in this tournament. And then when you get all these teams involved and there's a lot of action, it's always nice to see things just going over time. And, I think that's the beauty of the World Cup, in my opinion, is when you have all these great countries coming together and you get these big upsets too. Take a look at it. Japan. Nobody expected Japan to get the W against Spain, and then they're on. Same with South Korea too, and theirs was more of like a needle in a haystack kind of idea. So I think in that sense, I'm very grateful for this World Cup that everybody, I think, gets a certain chance. You have three teams from the Asian Federation that is in, that is Australia, South Korea, and Japan. And then also for the second World Cup in three editions of this, you're going to have two African teams. This year it's going to be Senegal, and then along with Senegal, Morocco. So two teams. Senegal, it's been a while. I think 2002 was the last time they qualified. And then Morocco on the other side, theirs was all the way back in 1986. So there's obviously a lot of teams that haven't qualified in a while. Take a look at Poland too. Actually, believe it or not, edging out Mexico for that spot overall. So interestingly enough, there's going to be a lot of talk and a lot of conversation too, in my opinion, on what this World Cup is all about. And I think when we look back at it, off tomorrow, 8 a.m. Mountain Standard Time, 10 a.m. Eastern, where you're earlier. Sunday, you're going to go to the other side of the bracket, top right, if you look at like the bracket from both sides in that way. You're going to have England against Senegal to as the later matchup, and then France against Poland will be your earlier matchup. And then taking a look at the other side, Monday, you're going to have Japan, Croatia, and then Brazil, South Korea. And then the final day, you'll have Morocco, Spain, and Portugal, Switzerland. Little differences with this World Cup to notice: the fact that it's only about 20 some days rather than the usual 32 days. That's how long a World Cup usually is. And because of that, people usually take a day off between the last group stage game and the knockout. Not going to happen this time because so many people that are there in the middle. Obviously, I'm just looking at this list of the types of games we have overall, and I'm going to start off with the one that a lot of people circled on their list: Netherlands against the United States. The United States, too, I will say this as a US fan myself, that there has been some sort of just like overall camaraderie with the team itself, but how the US has come together to support this team. We haven't, or the United States in that case, has not been at this level in 8 years. 8 years. And even then, there's been so many different developments with the United States in terms of players going over towards Europe, not just going towards Europe, but playing with big clubs in Europe. Christian Pulisic playing with Chelsea, Tyler Adams and Brendan Aronson playing with Leeds, just to name a few of those guys getting some quality experience overall. When I look at this game for the United States, they faced an England side that, sure, they drew them 0-0, but for me, this is a stepping stone game. If the United States can beat Netherlands, this is the way of saying for the United States, not just welcome back, because welcome back has already happened. Regardless of the result, I have to give a lot of props to the United States for just whatever they've done. They've given back some hope for a lot of kids, not just soccer kids, but kids in general to just fall or in sense refall in love with the game of soccer. And I think that's what I've really appreciated with the United States overall. They've reset kind of that standard, just before 2018 and the fallout from that World Cup qualification cycle. 2014, we made it to the round of 16. 2010, round of 16 as well. So this is the third consecutive appearance we've made at the World Cup that we have made it to the round of 16. So regardless of what happens, they've already established some sort of things to tell you. Obviously, it's big. It is an absolute big game for this team. Big game for Netherlands as well, in sense that in 2018, they didn't also make the World Cup, and they probably had bigger ramifications to the fact that they were third place in 2014 and then made it to the final in 2010, only to not make it. And now they're also kind of on the rebound, trying to get back into that upper echelon of the standings. You think about it, Netherlands was a pot two team. If you don't understand the pots, here's how it works. So, usually, when the groups are created, there are usually four pots based off rankings. So, there's usually pot one, two, three, four, and usually goes down the rankings. The thing is that the host is in pot one automatically. And because the host won automatically, caused Group A to kind of be like more in favor of Netherlands, who was a good pot two team, and that's what caused it to be. So, anyhow, props to Netherlands. I mean, to just coming back and having that command. The United States in general, don't get me wrong, I love this team, but Greg Berhalter in general, I think he's done a better job as this World Cup has gone along, but he struggles at playing a full 90 minutes. And the problem when you can't play full 90 minutes, sometimes you lose. It happened against Wales where they got an equalizer. It happening almost happened against Iran where Iran was just going crazy, and then eventually we somehow held on for the win. Same goes with England somewhat, even though we had the advantage. Either way, the United States will have to come out with a high command in this game. The United States will have to do it. The other thing to note about this game is just the type of support that people have had overall. Take, for example, I want to note one in particular because I've been seeing videos, reaction videos everywhere else, regardless where you go. I want to give a shout out to Oxford, Ohio, and specifically in Oxford, Ohio, Brick Street. Brick Street has done a great job over this past World Cups, providing some watch parties, and especially they kind of got big. They got viral with the winning Christian Pulisic scored, and everybody was jumping up and down. I'll tell you this too. I grew up about 35 minutes away from Miami University in Oxford. I lived in Westchester Liberty Township for quite a long time. And I've been to Miami a few times as well. I would have never expected Miami University to be that much of a soccer school, but here we are. And boy, oh boy, I love that passion. I mean, if you are a student at Miami University, get yourself out there, get yourself up to Brick Street because boy, oh boy, I mean, if I was a student there, I would be there as well. What an electric atmosphere that is to just sit there with your friends, maybe have a drink or two, and just kick back and relax. But overall, just be passionate for the game. I gotta say, as an Ohio kid myself, and Cincinnati has started coming up the ranks too in soccer, starting off with USL, now in MLS. I have to give a round of applause, without a doubt, a round of applause to Brick Street in Oxford. Shout out to you guys, and shout out to other different places across the nation that are having some watch parties tomorrow because you guys are the ones that are building the sport in general. So that's the big thing with the United States. I'll get off my soapbox there. Let's take a look at some other ones because I want to take a look at the bottom half. I was putting in some brackets before the World Cup started, and I was thinking to myself, if there was one side that would be a stronger side, it would obviously be the top side. You've got Netherlands, Argentina, Brazil, all teams that, in my opinion, could win the World Cup. On the bottom side, I mean, you had England. France ended up making it. In my opinion, I thought France was going to suffer the champion's curse, but France ended up making it. I want to focus all the way at the bottom though, but you have Morocco and Spain, Portugal and Switzerland. Both of those 2 games will be on Tuesday. In my opinion, I think either one of those 2 teams could end up winning it. Any of those 4 teams could make the semifinal, and for Portugal too. Switzerland, I was calling their game earlier today, and they look like a pretty good squad overall. Serbia had a good offense, but they've had a good offense before then. I'd be really excited to see if Switzerland can make a run because they've always been a team that has kind of made the round of 16 and then kind of subsided over time. They've never really taken that step forward, thing big in that regards. I'd really like Switzerland, and that too for Switzerland. I believe in the 2016 Euro, they ended up playing Portugal in the round of 16. Portugal won on penalties and ended up winning the Euro that year. So I'm not saying the same could happen this year for either side, Portugal or Switzerland, but either way, big matchup. And in my opinion, I think that's a match that could go either way. It's one of the matches I think in my top three. So that's one. The other game, and this is just a personal opinion of mine, I think has to be France Poland. Poland is a good squad in the sense, you know, they have Robert Lewandowski. We know about Robert Lewandowski, the goals he scored with Poland, the goals he scored with Bayern Munich, now doing it with FC Barcelona. But I think beyond its offense, Poland's defense was kind of decent as well. And you have to give credit to Wojciech Szczesny, their goalkeeper, because boy, oh boy, I mean, I think a lot of people just fell in love with Poland off his performance. In my opinion, his performance got Poland to the knockout stage, even though they conceded 2 goals to Argentina, but they were decent goals as well. I think my concern for Poland is can they keep their defense the way it is? Because they faced an Argentina squad that was kind of up in the ranks and was their best squad out there. You look at France, they rested most of their starters for the game against Tunisia because they had already qualified for the knockout, but they ended up losing 1-0. Many of their star players came in as substitutes, still couldn't muster a point. So overall, I don't know if that has something to do. Like I know at the NFL, it's a case where sometimes if teams rest their starters, then sometimes they don't do well to start off the playoffs. Like there are some ramifications like that in the NFL. I don't think it's that bad in soccer, but either way, for France, and especially a team that, you know, didn't have Karim Benzema, Ballon d'Or winner, not playing in this World Cup because he suffered an injury in training. But you still have Kylian Mbappe, you still have Antoine Griezmann. But I'm really looking forward to see if France continues the same way or do we see the champion's curse come through? Because, like I've said, heavy is the head that holds the crown. And that's the case with this. France is the first team since Brazil in 2006 to not make it out of the group stage. That is in terms of reigning champions. Kind of big, right? Kind of big. So I think in that sense, I'm right. Heavy is the head that holds the crown. And I think for me, crown's coming up for France. In general, international football, they haven't looked that strong, in my opinion. That's just my honest opinion, but they don't look that strong. They do not look that strong in sense that they lost to Switzerland and they pick up some interesting losses as well, both in Nations League and elsewhere. I think in France, in general, France is a good team. I just don't see them going on. And if they do, props to them because the Champions Curse is something special in general. So again, France against Poland. That will be at Alto Mama Stadium on Sunday. That will be 8 a.m. Mountain Standard Time. I will be on the call for that game. So that's one. Netherlands US, I think could be another. I don't know if it would be top three though, in terms of knockout stage. And by the way, this is no particular order as well. But let's see. Let's take a look at some other ones. Another one that I think low key could be interesting. I think it's a tie here. Japan, Croatia, and Morocco, Spain. Not to disrespect Japan and Morocco, but those are two teams. Japan actually low key I kind of I kind of have some respect because they had Spain, they had Germany. The question is, do they play down to their level? Because you think about it, they've conceded the opening goal in every single one of their group stage matches. The problem with Croatia is they're a high flying attacking team. You have to get the first blood drawn if you're Japan. And in my opinion, I think that's gonna be kind of the drawing point, I think, for Japan is can they do that? Can they go face a Croatia team that, although is getting older, sure, they were runner up in 2018, but they're gonna have to put the front foot on them. Like some people were asking me, how much of Japan is legit? And I'll say, you know what, they're legit, but along with playing 90 minutes, you think about it, they're a team that loves to sit back, and when they sit back too much, then they get punished. That's what happened against Costa Rica. That's how they lost to Costa Rica, and that's what happens overall. The other game I think, in my opinion, that's a little interesting is Morocco-Spain. Morocco in the sense too with Group F. No disrespect to Croatia, Belgium, and Canada, but that, in my opinion, was the most meh kind of group in the sense that nobody really appeared that they had a true command in that group. In the sense, that team can go on and win something, right? Portugal with Group H, they showed it the first two games. England in Group B, one of the few teams to still remain unbeaten, believe it or not. More on that later. That's, I think, one of the ideals that in this World Cup is just the idea of just going forward. And I think Morocco in general, people forget that Morocco has quite a lot of people that are playing abroad, especially in Europe. Ashraf Hakimi with PSG, formerly at Dortmund, and then Ziyech as well. Ziyech, man at Chelsea. There are so many guys on these squads that you don't think about because it's Africa, it's Asia, but they have so many guys playing in Europe that they can go to that other level. And they face a team like Spain. When they're facing a team like Spain, that's where they get some of the momentum going forward. And I think when I was watching the game between Spain and Japan yesterday, I thought to myself, Spain's being smart here because for two reasons. One, if they lose to Japan, Japan was going to take number one. Spain was going to take number two. You're probably thinking, why would you want to take number two? But here's the thing. If Spain would have taken number one, you're playing a Croatia team, which they played in the round of 16 of the Euro last year. Spain won in a thriller. It was like 5-3 in extra time, I believe. But more than that, if you beat Croatia, you're most likely facing Brazil in the quarterfinal, which Brazil, in my opinion, looks like the cleanest team in this World Cup. Granted, they lost today to Cameroon, but that was their B squad, and obviously they didn't have much to play for in sense that a win wouldn't have solidified much other than the fact that they would have been the only team in this World Cup to have gone perfect. More on that later as well. But yeah, Spain in general, they look like a strong squad. They just kind of lost their grip there against Japan, which is, I think, how Japan put a knife into Germany, and I think how they're going to try to put a knife into, hopefully for them, many opponents in this knockout stage. So I think Morocco Spain is going to be very interesting in that regard. It's kind of an old side against the new side, so that's going to be interesting. In that case, too, it's a toss up. I think any of those four teams in the bottom bracket, Morocco, Spain, Portugal, or Switzerland, could end up advancing to the knockouts, as that is going to the semifinals. In some cases, I'm in some brackets, I even had Spain and Portugal in the final. Forget about going to the semifinals, in the final. Didn't have them winning. I had Argentina or Brazil. Those are my two, Argentina or Brazil. And I still kind of stick with those. Although, if you were to ask me this other question, who has the easiest route to the final? That's an interesting question as well. That is a very interesting question. I would say Brazil, just because you got round of 16, you got a quarters, and maybe that ends up being the decider as well, in sense of because you think about it, every other team could have like a grudge match against them, right? Argentina has to face most likely Netherlands. Even then, the United States might give them a run for their money. England faces France. That's going to be a barn burner game. Even if they face Poland, could also be interesting. Spain facing Portugal, Switzerland. Any of those four teams, as I've said, could make it out. In my case, I think it still has to be Brazil. Their B team stepped in for their A team, and they've got the rest overall. And because they have that rest now, that's I think what's going to maybe propel them to at least the semifinals. But the question is, they're rested, haven't been tested. So the question becomes if they're facing a Netherlands or an Argentina in the semis, Are they ready for it? And that's where maybe Brazil kind of gets nipped in the back. If they don't make it to the semifinals, in my opinion, this World Cup is a disappointment for Brazil. Even though they look sexy at times, it's still a disappointment. I think it's what happens afterwards. The fact that you could have Netherlands or even Argentina in a rematch of the Copa America final from last year. Pretty dope stuff. Pretty dope stuff, in my opinion. Some other things to note, some other facts I found out. I was talking about the United States earlier. The fact that Tyler Adams ended up having the most ground covered in a game, most ground covered on average. Tyler goes to Tyler Adams. Says something about the United States. They're workhorses, and especially going forward, Adams was going to be the captain and not Christian Pulisic. Well, I think you understood why. It's quite simple, in my opinion. So that's one thing. The other thing I noted is all of the teams in I guess, actually all of the teams except 2, have a starting 11. They have a starting 11 where at least 50% of them play in the big 5 leagues. That is England, France, Germany, Italy, and Spain. Pretty cool. Pretty cool. The only 2 teams that don't, South Korea and Australia. Both of them also face really sexy teams in Brazil and Argentina, respectfully. So I think in that sense too, I mean, I found that fascinating in the sense of, dealing with those guys and like dealing with what is the excellence in soccer. And we found out it's been the case all along. It has been it's been European football. It's been those 5 leagues in general. And you have to give credit to a lot of these teams, like the United States in general, only team to advance from CONCACAF, also the only team to be above that 50% mark. Both of the African teams that made it, Senegal and Morocco, also in that regards. It's rewarding in that sense that although there's not too many UEFA teams, not too many CONMEBOL, and they kind of got cut out by this African regime, the Asian regime. It's still interesting some of these teams and just see how major they are. And it's going to be interesting to see how Australia fares against Argentina and South Korea against Brazil in that aspect. So that's one idea. The other idea is people have been talking about how this is an unpredictable World Cup. And you saw it today too. Brazil losing to Cameroon. At that time, I still think you have to give credit to all of these other teams. It's what the World Cup is all about, giving opportunities. It's what I said at the top of the show. And it's surely been the case in this World Cup as well. In fact, this is the first World Cup since 1994 in which all of the teams that won their respective groups did not go perfect, aka they did not win every group stage match. And it also shows in that sense when I ask who has the easiest way, it's a very complicated question because of who they face. It's all comes down to who they face and who has the momentum on that given day. And I think that's the kind of momentum that a lot of teams are looking for. And I think as fans, we just got to sit back, relax, and maybe take a bowl of popcorn and eat it all up because boy, oh boy, this knockout stage will be something of the ages. As I said earlier, 3 teams from Asia, 2 for the first time ever, 2 teams from Africa, second World Cup in 3 editions too. So quite impressive there. And then of course, the stalwarts in general, England, France, Spain, Argentina, Brazil, all going back and all trying to win a World Cup in general. For many of them, 2 other World Cup after their initial win. So that's it for my coverage and my preview of the knockout rounds here. Thank you for tuning in as this was on both YouTube and Instagram Live. I'm Ahirsan Hassan. So long, good night, stay safe, and hopefully I'll see you tomorrow morning for Netherlands against the United States.